I'm going to teach you the most optimal tactics to most effectively use the Lord of Virulence in your Death Guard games. But first, let's look at why or whether you should be using the Lord of Virulence in your list. One of the great things about the Lord of Virulence is it's really powerful for the amount of points that it costs, and what I mean when I say this is it's only 120 points, but it's really strong in melee, having 5 attacks at times 2 strength, that's like 8 strength, and then high AP and 2 damage per hit. So the Lord of Virulence can do a really nice amount of damage, particularly when compared to other units. And also for an HQ, it's really resilient, having its 4-up invulnerable save and 2-up save with 6 wounds. It's going to be able to tank quite a bit of damage, unlike some of the other Death Guard characters, like say a Foul Blightspawn or Tallyman. Another advantage of the Lord of Virulence is being a Death Guard Lord. It gives nearby buffs to nearby Plague Company core units, which are your Plague Marines and Terminators and stuff, so it's really nice. And even if the buffs aren't too significant, mainly the Lord of Death Guard or as well as Master of Destruction, even though the buffs aren't that significant, they only buff you get a certain role, they still add up over time, and it's just quite nice to have those extra advantages. The only real disadvantage with the Lord of Virulence is that it's quite slow and it doesn't have very much long range abilities, so in terms of its actual raw firepower and fighting power, it's not really going to be doing much for the first few turns of the game, which is a bit of a shame, but once it does get into melee, it's really powerful, and again, that's kind of a disadvantage shared with most of the Death Guard. Though it is still nice that it does have that Twin Plague Spewer, giving it 12 inches of range, and also its flamers, so it does damage in Overwatch, which is also really nice. Well, good damage in Overwatch, because it doesn't have to hit on 6s, and instead auto-hit, which is one thing the Lord of Contagion doesn't have, which is one of the reasons to use this over the Lord of Contagion. I'm not going to go too deep into that now, as I've got a separate video on that, which you can click on in the top right corner. Now, in terms of the best tactics and how to use the Lord of Virulence, I like to have the Lord of Virulence with the bulk of the main part of your army, given it does give those buffs to nearby Plague Marines as well as Terminators, and so it's just really nice having those, making use of the rerolls. And also, although you do want it with the main bulk of your army, just supporting them in melee as well as with the rerolls, they don't necessarily need to be guarded by other infantry being close to them, as well as obviously the deathshroud ability, as you should probably focus on making it so that your other characters can't be targeted, things like the Foul Blightspawn or Tallyman, that are a lot weaker than Lord of Virulence, as the Lord of Virulence can take quite a few hits, given obviously it's really resilient, particularly for 120 points. So, though you still do want to have some protection against the Lord of Virulence, as you don't want it to get completely wiped off the board, but the enemy is likely going to focus on your weaker units that do a higher damage output, like say a Foul Blightspawn, so you should probably protect those over the Lord of Virulence. Also, another thing about the Lord of Virulence, and I kind of have this thing with almost all of the Death Guard, is that it's not really that useful in Deep Strike. And the main reason is it's mainly a melee-focused unit, and if you're in Deep Strike, you're going to need to get that 9-inch charge on your first turn, but you're most likely going to fail that. I think it's like a 1 in 10 chance of succeeding, so not really looking on your side. And then because of the Death Guard's poor mobility, they can just quite easily move away from them and shoot at a distance. And typically, I find that when you Deep Strike, you usually just get shot off the board before you're able to actually fight the enemy in melee. And that applies for most of the Death Guard as well. It's not really an army that works well in Deep Strike, even though you do have the ability which allows you to do it. In terms of stratagems, I think there are lots of quite useful ones, like ones that increase the range of your Plague Spewers by 6 inches, but one of my favourite ones to use with the Lord of Virulence is this thing called Befouled Incubators. You can see it on the bottom right of the page, and basically every time you kill a unit in an enemy model in an enemy unit, then that you roll a d6, and on a 3-up, that unit suffers a mortal wound. And the reason this is nice is if you're going through lots of like weaker units, or even it still works quite well with stronger units, where it's infantry that only have like 1 or 2 wounds per piece, you've got, every time you kill one, you've got quite considerable chance of doing another mortal wound, which if they're 1 wound each, could kill another. So it's just really nice being able to do that extra damage, and I personally do find that stratagem works quite a lot. And also with the Lord of Virulence, it is probably worth thinking about what Warlord traits are and relics you want to put on it, as it is going to be one of your main Death Guard characters. Although, to be honest, there aren't any that are particularly really good with Lord of Virulence. Although I might make a separate video talking about like Warlord traits and relics and stuff and which ones you should be using. So that's about it for this video. Hope you did find it useful. Comment down below what you want me to discuss in future videos. I do have a few ideas. And hope you enjoyed. Subscribe.